Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a crime film from Slovakia and Ukraine, Slovak and Ukrainian language, English subs, released in the year 2017, directed by Peter Badyak, and this film is called The Line. So The Line is set on the Slovak-Ukrainian border. It's a very poor community, and it's a community where Adam Kraniak lives. Now, Adam Kraniak is the head of this local crime family, and he is tasked with smuggling in tobacco and other goods through the Ukraine-Slovak border. So one day he is propositioned by a Ukrainian gangster, a very fearful gangster, to do some people smuggling. So Adam Kraniak decides to do this, but unfortunately runs into problems in the future that is going to really complicate the situation. That's going to put not only himself, but his family and those that he loves in grave danger. So what that danger is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Line. In my last review I talked about foreign films and how a lot of foreign films go under the radar and don't get the accolades that they deserve. And so it's a really sad state of affairs when it comes to movies. You think of mainstream Hollywood, you think of Marvel films, big explosions and where you don't really have to have an attention span, and all of these other movies go under the radar and can be lost forever if you don't really go out of your way to try and find them. So The Line was one of these movies I was hoping was going to be fantastic. I saw the trailer, I thought, Eastern European cinema is very impressive, but I hadn't really heard of this before, and so I wanted to see what this was all about. I had my fingers crossed that it was going to be great, but I had my skepticism because, again, this has gone under the radar. This has steered clear of attention that a lot of foreign films unfortunately fall victim to. But I was hoping that this movie was going to be like some other films where it was a lot better than I was anticipating. And so after watching The Line, I will say this movie was absolutely fascinating. This was an absolutely fantastic experience, and again, it's a tragic example of films just going under the radar and being lost forever. So please go out there and support these movies, because you never know what sort of movie you're missing. And so if you choose to ignore this film, what you're missing is just a really realistic portrayal of humans in a very inhumane environment. So the inhumane environment is besieged by violence, it's besieged by betrayal, it's horrible things happening, but then you have the desperation out of these main characters. So the main character, Adam Kraniak, he's a hulking figure, very intimidating, but I thought as though that intimidation was all a facade, because who he was really was a family man. And so the contrasting difference between his family life and his work life I thought was fascinating, because he was a victim of his circumstances. He was desperate, he needed to make money, and the people that he was dealing with were not going to react well to the kindness that he shows to his family. So it's showing you two sides of a very violent man, but what I loved about it was that it was sympathising for his cause. And so a lot of these other movies paint gangster life as a life that you would want, a life where you're going to be rich, it's all glamorous, whereas this movie and a lot of other foreign films paints the gangster life in a world that you don't want to be a part of. It's a tragic world. It's good people having to do horrible things, and unfortunately those horrible things is going to produce betrayal. And basically people backstabbing each other because they've got no other way out. And so I thought it was a very suffocating world that Peter Badyak managed to create, and it's just a showcase of how good European cinema is, because this is a movie where each and every character I thought was very sympathetic, especially the crime family. So you have demonised people, basically people who are shunned from society because they are criminals and they're doing the wrong thing. And yes, they're doing horrible things, but I never thought as though they were enjoying what they were doing, because they had to do it. As I said, circumstances were shaping these people and it was influencing their behaviour. And so the interactions between this crime family I thought was actually quite touching. It was quite emotional, because I felt they actually genuinely loved each other. The chemistry was absolutely fantastic, because each and every character has a lot of time and attention put into them. So you don't want to see any of them die, but when they get into a situation that they're completely out of their depth, I thought to myself, this is just a catastrophe waiting to happen. It's inevitable that things are going to go bad. And so you always have that fear. I was on the edge of my seat. Without being a straight out action film, I was still on the edge of my seat, because I wanted to see how this crime family were going to get out of this predicament, and I was hoping that each and every one of them could. And when horrible things start to happen, I could really feel it emotionally. And so that was because a lot of time was put into the characters. This is not so much a crime film about crime specifically, but as I said, it is desperation. It's a movie about doing horrible things to each other because, as I said, you have no choice. And so I thought that was the most fascinating aspect of The Line, and that's the reason why it worked as well as it did. I thought the cinematography, none of this movie is glamorous. It was very gritty, downbeat and dirty and depressing. The soundtrack was equally as depressing, and it creates a world that I just saw, as I said before, it was tragic. It was a world I didn't want to be a part of, but it was a world that I couldn't help but immerse myself in. And so the script is the reason why this happens, and it was equally as important for the script to be complemented by really good performances, which is exactly what each and every character in this movie produces. The acting was absolutely outstanding. I thought the Ukrainian gangster, very intimidating, and yes, he was a stereotypical sort of gangster, but it didn't really rely on the outside characters. It relied within this family. So not only his crime family, but his actual loved ones, his wife. And so everything was going from bad to worse, and I just couldn't help but feel as though it was catastrophic. And so this is a movie that really does pay respects to the world that it's depicting. It's not glamorizing it, it's not gratuitous. I just thought as though it was really respectful, very downbeat, and very, very impressive. If I have issues with this movie, I thought the ending was a little bit far-fetched. That didn't really match the majority of the movie, because I thought to myself, well, I didn't really need that. I actually thought it would have been a lot more hard-hitting if they went down a different path. I'm not going to give anything away, but I just thought as though that it kind of stood out a little bit in a negative way. But pushing that aside, it was still a very, very good crime film that I would highly, highly recommend. You've got real characters. You're not hating people because they're demonized for what they're doing. You're actually sympathizing for them. And that's a brave thing to do, and not a lot of filmmakers can do this, but Peter Babiak has really delivered that in the line, and that's the reason why I'm going to give this film 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.